Good morning, y'all. Josh of Severe Weather. Welcome to my channel. If this is your first time, I'm going to be doing a fairly detailed forecast today with a lot of emphasis on the tropics, both with things heating up in the Atlantic and some really nasty storms in the Western Pacific. Then I'm going to focus on the threat for some severe weather across the northern portion of the country here over the next few days. And then we'll cap it off with some temperatures as well and some of the heat that's going to be building eastward with some of our hottest temperatures this summer expected to build from the plains into the eastern United States. So this is going to be a lengthier video, so if you don't have a ton of time, you can skip through it. I encourage you to listen to it all, of course, but I realize that's not always possible. I also encourage you to, if you're watching on a mobile device, it's going to be a little bit tough to make out some of the graphics, and there's not a lot I can do about that, so maybe find a bigger screen or a television or a tablet to watch. So anyway, I appreciate y'all's time today. Let's get to the tropics. And while there are no immediate concerns, we definitely start to see some things that may look a little bit more threatening to the eastern coast of the United States. The Gulf is shut down for business at the time being due to a large region of high pressure, but farther east, and this is classic El Nino, we are starting to see things starting to come to life over the main development region. Now, no immediate threats right now. We do have a wave that looked like it was going to try to develop into Tropical Storm Emily, but it failed. It hit some wind shear and some dry air. Still bringing some squally weather today into tomorrow over the Windward Islands, even parts of the Leeward Islands. But looks like if it does develop, it's going to be a brief system and then falling apart north of Venezuela here in the Central Caribbean in a couple of days. We also have a new area to keep an eye on, which most models are not developing, but they are pulling moisture towards the southeast coast here by the end of this week into the weekend. And that is aimed at the upper Florida coast into the Carolinas here. So we'll keep an eye on it. I don't think this one will end up being Tropical Storm Emily, just a little bit too much stacked against it. But the one behind it is the one that models are picking up on and developing for the most part. Now, there are obvious disagreements, as this is still about a week off or so, and you cannot expect everything to agree in a longer term forecast. But I'm going to try to take a stab on it here. And this could be a threat to parts of the Northeast Caribbean and the Big Islands, maybe the Bahamas, maybe Bermuda, and maybe the East Coast of the U.S. as well. Again, just something that we're going to keep an eye on, nothing that you want to get too concerned about at this point, but we will certainly be tracking that for you guys in the coming days. Here is a look at the National Hurricane Center, a pair of lemons here, 10% chance of development. This system looked a lot better on Friday, and now it's just pretty much falling apart, still holding moisture with it and squally winds. Then our next system has popped up, and the chance is pretty low that this will develop, 20% by the time it gets close to Georgia and South Carolina towards the Friday night, Saturday time frame. I don't think either of these is going to scoop up a name, at least I don't think. And the reason why we just are dealing with a little too much wind shear, we're not in a favorable Madden-Julian oscillation, which probably is confusing and doesn't mean a lot to you guys, but I'll simplify it for you here. We are presently heading into phase 6 of the MJO, which favors activity in the Western Pacific. When we get over to phase 8 and into phase 1, which will look like it'll be towards the beginning of August, then conditions would be more favorable for rising air and lower amounts of wind shear in the Atlantic basin, especially closer to the U.S. And it looks like it's going to be at least another week before we talk about that happening. Even though water temperatures are super hot across most of the Atlantic, exception being where we did have Hurricane Dawn here over the Central Atlantic that took away some of the heat potential from the Central Atlantic. It'll probably rebuild, though, here quickly. But you can see areas off the East Coast are running several degrees above average, 2 to 3 degrees Celsius above average. And off the Florida coast, around the Florida Keys, even hotter than that. In fact, I saw this tweet yesterday, which I don't know what the period of record is, if this really is a record or not, or close to a record. 99.3 degrees water temperature. That's almost hot tub temperature. But it's certainly of concern if this is, in fact, data that is properly filtered and monitored, and this is, in fact, happening. No one wants to see that. But then yesterday, I also saw a report of 101.1 degrees water temperature over Manatee Bay near the Everglades, which is practically marsh at this point. And so obviously the data is favoring much hotter than average temperatures, but it is going to fluctuate a lot. And this may not affect storms moving into this region other than just continue to provide them with sustained heat fuel. So let's pray there's no storms heading through the Florida Keys, or we could be in trouble. All right, here's the water vapor imagery, a wide view. The Pacific, pretty quiet. Just a flare up here that's not going to be any threat to land. Another flare up south of Panama. You can see an upper low south of the off of the coast of central Mexico moving away. Another upper low moving through Cuba. The Gulf seeing a lot of westerly wind shear with a boundary that made its way through Louisiana. I saw from my family there that it cooled down there yesterday. I think they even got down to the low 70s, which if you live in Louisiana in dog days, that's actually kind of comfortable compared to what it has been. But this boundary exists off the southeast coast, and that is going to protect the East Coast over the next few days from any real threat. Now, we do have this flare-up that we're keeping an eye on in the Southwest Atlantic. Looks very disorganized at this point. And another flare-up with what was Invest 95L may still be an Invest, just not looking organized. You can see it's obviously got a lot of moisture moving through the area, but it's getting strong wind shear out of the west and southwest, keeping it from organizing into anything organized. This is the new flare-up that has that yellow percentage chance. Models not showing it developing, but generally it is heading towards Florida and the southeast towards the end of the week. So we will see an uptick in moisture. This boundary here is going to kind of disintegrate and give way to a feed of tropical moisture. You can see in the Caribbean, pretty good upper low moving over the Caymans here, and that's producing a lot of wind shear, so nothing would organize in the Caribbean. If this disturbance, 95L, does move to the central Caribbean, it's going to get wind sheared by this upper low, and that is, of course, not good if you are expecting tropical development. Here is that wave, and you can see it is bringing some increase in moisture in what's been a very dry Atlantic. This is not uncommon for July. We saw it last year, even in La Nina, and we flipped to El Nino this year, where much of the Atlantic had subsiding air, which is, of course, not good for any tropical development. Lots of dry air coming off the Saharan layer. This deep black indicates that is still there. But this is going to provide somewhat of a path for this monsoon trough to potentially develop something along it. It's adding moisture into an area that's very dry, and that would favor eventual gradual development. You can see coming off of Africa, very dry air in place over this portion of the Eastern Atlantic. However, lots of moisture on our monsoon trough. And as we see some enhancement in the amount of lift, and that is due to a Kelvin wave coming through and the MJO starting to switch, we are going to head into what I think will be a busier pattern coming up probably towards the beginning of August or very end of the month of July. I say end of July, it could get delayed a little bit. I've seen this a lot where forecasts jump the gun just a little bit, but they are on track in the longer term. Here's a look at Invest 95L. This is the Barbados radar. You can see some heavier showers moving through the Windward Islands, also across Trinidad, and a big area of rain actually heading into the Leeward Islands. Here are the island names, so you can see St. Vincent and the Grenadines getting some heavy rain, but if you get up a little farther north towards Dominica and Guadeloupe, those areas are actually going to see bigger amounts of rain and maybe some gustier wind as well. These islands right in here, even though the center is kind of passing south and east of Barbados, all the heavy rain with it is actually going to be a couple hundred miles to the north and east of where the track goes. And you can see on the European, we're seeing this prediction of gustier winds over Guadeloupe, even over the Leeward Islands here. Gusts to 35 miles per hour are possible. The center of the storm, while it goes over Barbados, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and Grenada, we're seeing gusts staying below 30 miles per hour. So not a very healthy center of this storm, more that the winds are displaced well to the north in where our pressure gradient is larger due to the difference between higher pressure over the subtropical Atlantic and lower pressures here trying to form over the Windward Islands. So that is basically it. Yes, models are taking it this far. They're probably going to, honestly, this is going to die in about here. We're not going to be talking about it after the end of the week. Now we're looking at our next area of moisture. This is the European precipitable water, and you can see the moisture building over the northeastern Bahamas here tomorrow night into Thursday, and then surging northward into the Gulf Stream here Thursday afternoon, Thursday night. We'll see moisture picking up across the east coast of Florida, and then it will pick up over the rest of the southeastern coast here on Friday. So this is kind of, if you think about where the rain chances are higher due to this tropical disturbance, they will be feeding up towards the Grand Strand and towards the North Carolina beaches here later Friday into Saturday. So we may not have the best start to our beach weekend. The good news is that this gets kicked away by early next week, so we aren't going to see it moving too far inland. I really am struggling to find a development of this. I finally found the ICON model, which is not one I typically look at for tropical development, but you can see it does have some upper level spin here later tomorrow off of the Bahamas, and then Thursday north of the Bahamas and east of Florida. And then it's very possible something very kind of minor does try to organize at the very last second here east of Jacksonville and St. Simon's Island Thursday night into Friday morning over the Gulf Stream, and then it will turn right and head up into South Carolina Friday night into Saturday. So there is a very tiny window here, hence the 20%, where we may see a depression try to get going up for a brief amount of time, but that moisture gets sent northeast, and it's already moving away Saturday night into Sunday. So the first part of your weekend at the beaches could be rough. After that, I do think we see improvement as that gets kicked away. European ensembles not showing really any development off the East Coast. This is the next wave I'm keeping an eye on for you guys. And coming out of the deep regions of Africa, looks like it will try to develop nearer to the east of the islands here next Monday. And then the European ensemble is not too jazzed about what happens afterwards. It says it's going to get wind sheared, and there's fewer and fewer solutions that try to, excuse me, hold it together. But the GFS model does disagree. And I'm going to show you that difference here. This is the GFS from last night, and you can see low pressure trying to form here. This is this weekend, but by the time we get to about Monday is when it shows potentially a wrapped up storm circulation or a depression nearer to the north of Puerto Rico. Now, as we get into Tuesday and Wednesday, it says the warm waters east of the Bahamas are going to favor development here, and this system could take a swipe at the southeast coast. This particular run has it recurving just offshore, but that will still impact the outer banks and the beaches here. I will caution you with the GFS, we often see it deepen storms very quickly in the long term. This often doesn't actually play out that way. If that were the case, I would have about 10 hurricanes so far this year. We know that's not the case, but it has shown an inconsistent signal that the southeast could be under the gun towards the weekend after next, around the 5th and 6th. Now, the run after it is not developing it anything like that. If we go back here in time, we can see it does have a weaker system moving through Puerto Rico here around August 1st and 2nd, and then it takes it on a farther south and west track and then just kills it off. And a lot of that's probably due to the fact that it's going over the mountains of Hispaniola. So the GFS, while it has shown inconsistently threats to the East Coast, has not been consistent. And can we really expect that after 10 days? I say no. The European model does also show some development in here towards this weekend coming up, but it is stronger with the trough over the southeast and recurving it east of Bermuda. So I will say that over time, we've seen the European, at least this tropical season, end up too far north and east, and it has corrected to the GFS and tracked farther south and west. So I'm not going to shut the door on the East Coast right now. I think it's way too soon to make that call. You can see the icon model is kind of in between the two, south of Bermuda, and this is Tuesday, August 1st. So we may have a name system somewhere between Puerto Rico and the Bahamas and Bermuda here early in August. After that, a lot of uncertainty as to intensity, as to track, but all we can really do is just kind of monitor trends at this point. Here is the European ensemble. You can see, let me put this in motion for you guys here. Looks like we have a weak system here by this weekend, tracking west-northwest, and the European does come close, but not close enough to Puerto Rico, actually turns it to the right. And half of the ensemble members have a named storm east of Bermuda. The others have it as a weaker system between the Bahamas and Bermuda. And the European only goes out to 10 days, but there are solutions here that certainly would have you watching more closely here off of the southeast coast. This is the 3rd and 4th of August. GFS model is going to be farther south and west than the European. It develops the system farther south, which is interesting because the GFS has more development. Typically, when you have a storm develop in the Atlantic, the stronger it gets sooner, the more it's going to turn farther to the right. The weaker it is, the more to the south it'll be, and that's because of the trade winds. A weaker system has shorter thunderstorms that tend to get fed off of the trade winds and steered more westerly. A larger storm has bigger thunderstorms, which then get picked up by the upper level pattern, often more to the north and east. So the GFS is kind of contradictory to that if you look at the ensembles, but here you see several solutions coming up through the Bahamas, others towards Bermuda. And the East Coast certainly would need to watch this by the 4th of August. Fortunately, the GFS ensembles have trended right with this model suite. That doesn't mean they won't go back to the west, but this says that it's recurving and coming close to the East Coast in some solutions or closer to Bermuda in others. Either way, this will be something of interest because a lot of solutions have it as a hurricane. So this would be Emily, I believe. Now in the Pacific, we do have major typhoon Doksuri. You can see it became a strong Category 4. This is the Philippines. It's getting dangerously close now to the northeastern tip of the island. Stadium effect, going through a bit of an eye wall replacement, so it's probably done strengthening, but a strong Category 4 that is coming very close to Luzon in the northeast Philippines. It looks like it's going to track right over these islands here and cause all kinds of devastation before heading just to the south and west of Taiwan. And you know, the Western Pacific is open for business here. We're going to see multiple typhoons in the next couple of weeks. This is an extremely scary looking storm. Not the strongest we've had. We had a stronger one in May, but it is certainly going to be impacting the Philippines here right on through tomorrow, and then Taiwan after that. From Zoom Earth, this is the predicted track. Doksuri, it did get up to about 150 miles per hour, so a high-end Category 4 on the U.S. scale. It is expected to continue to the south and west of Taiwan, but the eastern tracks are very close to the island and then make landfall across southeastern China here, just to the west of Quanzhou. And I hope I said that right, weakening at that point to a Category 2 and then a Category 1. Big rainmaker here over eastern China over the next several days. Ensembles are in agreement. It goes right through the chute here, right between Taiwan and the Philippines and into China, and then turns right and weakens. The European is a little bit farther west of the GFS, which is funny because in the Atlantic, it's east of the GFS. In the Pacific, it's west. We see models do have their biases, but you can see this is the HAFS tropical model. Initializing just a little bit too strong, but regardless, it has it coming very close to the west coast of Taiwan and actually hugs the coast, and then weakens due to that interaction and moves quickly into China here. And this would be Friday morning Asian time. We have yet another system that could develop quickly here in about 5 to 6 days. Not much at this point, Invest 91W, but towards the end of this week, we may have a depression or a new cyclone, and then next week, likely a typhoon. Excuse me. This one's going to be farther east, though, of the Philippine Sea, and actually more of a threat potentially to Japan, China, and South Korea. You can see the European takes it right over Okinawa here in about 8 to 9 days. So that would be middle of next week. And a lot of solutions, this is the ensembles from the GFS, make it a potentially pretty strong typhoon. Maybe not as strong as Dotsuri, but certainly close. I don't remember the official name, but the Philippine name is Falcon. So that's actually pretty cool to me, kind of a military type name, space name. But you can see on the GFS, here is Dotsuri heading into China here Friday morning. Then here's the next one becoming a typhoon Friday night and Saturday, and then tracking over Okinawa on Monday night and Tuesday morning, and then heading dangerously close to the big city of Shanghai, China by next Wednesday. And then behind it, maybe a couple more typhoons forming. It is a GFS, so obviously we start to lose some confidence at this point. But the European even says, you know, we've got big storm after big storm here. This is Falcon, Category 2 typhoon, moving over Okinawa on Wednesday, and then heading slowly westward towards China here late next week. Maybe another system or two beyond that, we'll have to see. And the Icon, the German model, says it is going to also be a pretty big threat here to Okinawa. Category 2 strength here, Monday night and Tuesday of next week, and then heading westward towards Shanghai, China, towards Wednesday or Thursday of next week. So, a lot of you are probably tuning out at this point because I've spent so much time on the tropics, but we're talking millions of people worldwide that are under the gun with these typhoons. I feel very, feel like it's something I need to be addressing here. So in the U.S., we're seeing hot temperatures from Texas to the Dakotas and Montana, big region of high pressure over the central U.S., and storms going up and over it through the Great Lakes, the Ohio Valley, and the Northeast. South Florida, not escaping the heat either. Same with the Southwest. It's been hot all summer. You can see another, excuse me, another upper level system going up and over this ridge. Moving out of Montana today, it'll be heading into the Dakotas and Minnesota. And then that is what I'm more concerned about here tomorrow into the end of the week over the Midwest into the East. You can see slight risk over the Dakotas heading into Minnesota here by tonight. Also a slight risk with our storm system that's moving to the East Coast today. The Mid-Atlantic region, Chesapeake Bay area, maybe up to Philadelphia under a slight risk. Not really a tornado threat, but certainly a severe wind threat and a hail threat for both of these areas. Tomorrow, though, we now have an enhanced risk from northern Indiana and southern Michigan eastward into southwest Ontario. And in the last couple of weeks, it's been very busy across this region, really since the beginning of July. But this could be somewhat of a tornado outbreak here in the afternoon hours and late afternoon into early evening in places like Fort Wayne, Kalamazoo, Grand Rapids and Ada, Detroit, even maybe up to Flint, Michigan, and down to as far south and east as Cleveland and Westerville, Ohio, are in the risk for tornadoes. There's also a significant wind threat across the same area and a large hail threat as well. So tomorrow we're looking at a very busy afternoon and evening in this area, and then that shifts eastward and a slight risk on Thursday from northern Virginia right on up into southern New England and eastern New York State. In a place that has seen quite a bit of busy weather this month, we are likely to see more of that severe weather Friday. Beyond that, the predictability too low from Friday on. We should see a quieter pattern for a few days, but then it gets busy again after that. Here's a look real quick at the NAM model. Starting with the northern plains later today, we see severe weather over the Dakotas. This is going to be right around 6 o'clock Central Time, and then heading east and southeast into Nebraska, Minnesota, and Iowa late this evening, and then overnight across central and eastern Iowa. And then we catch a break here tomorrow for the most part. A few more storms are possible in North Dakota and western Minnesota with a threat for some hail and strong wind here as everything rides up and over our ridge. Now, the busier area is going to be here across the Great Lakes. And as we head to later today, we do see scattered showers and storms over Wisconsin and Michigan, and also a few storms moving into western Illinois this evening. But here is the bigger threat here. This is early tomorrow morning. We'll see showers and storms ongoing across the western lakes and then shifting eastward throughout the morning into Michigan and Ohio. However, that's not the main event. As we get later into the afternoon, we see additional storms developing right around 6 or 7 o'clock, kind of an upper level spin up here, which will produce widespread severe wind, hail, maybe a few tornadoes, basically from the thumb all the way down into the Chicagoland area. This is around 6, 7 o'clock. This is 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, everything racing southeast and then weakening some when it gets into the Ohio River Valley into West Virginia late tomorrow evening. In the northeast, we are going to see some scattered showers and storms today. Some of them could be severe, especially down around the Delmarva region. We catch a break for the most part later this evening and overnight. Tomorrow looks to be a slightly quieter day. It's going to get hot. And then as we get to tomorrow night, we already see severe weather across lower Ontario. That heads into western New York and weakens some. And then Thursday, we are looking at active weather in this area. The model stops here at this point, but I will show you in a little bit some longer range, actually in tomorrow's video. And then here we do see severe weather expected here across Maryland and the Delmarva and maybe northern and central Virginia around 4 or 5 o'clock here this afternoon, maybe even some rough storms around New York City by 6 or 7. So keep that in mind if you have travel plans, but worst of the weather is expected down in here with the threat for damaging wind and hail. We get a break tomorrow until our next system moves in during the day on Thursday. And I'm going to take you to the Canadian model here. Oops, that's not what I wanted. I'll get you the precipitation. And you can see this is Thursday afternoon, and we see everything's moving south and east here. A lot of storm fuel, so I think we are going to see some severe weather across this region, especially late Thursday, and really keying in on that 6 to 10 o'clock time frame here for Thursday night. Temperatures this summer have actually been very close to average. Despite how hot it's been in Texas, we've wiped that out with how much cooler it's been over the Central Plains and the mid-eastern U.S. and even New England. So right now we're running right around average for the first just past half of summer. So it's not been a super hot summer overall, but we have seen extremes in the interior west and in the east, and extreme heat across the south and in the northwest. However, we are looking at that getting wiped out with hotter than average temperatures over the next several weeks, especially in the plains. We're looking at 103 in Kansas today, and then St. Louis and Kansas City hit 100 tomorrow. We'll be into the low to mid 90s in central Illinois and Indiana. As we get to Thursday, 101 in St. Louis, 102 Kansas City. A little cooler right in Chicago, but getting inland, it'll be in the mid 90s in places like Rockford, Peoria, upper 90s, 96 in Indianapolis, 94 in Columbus, and we heat up as well here in the Northeast into the lower 90s in places like New York and Boston. You got there in April for a day, I remember that, but now we've got humidity, so it's going to be a rough one here on Thursday, and that's why we're expecting that severe weather. And then Friday, behind that front, it still heats right back up as we continue to have some of the hottest air of the summer. 96 in Charleston, it may get up to about 98 in Huntington and right up the Ohio River Valley, 97 in Cincinnati, 97 in Nashville, 97 in Richmond. So Friday is probably going to be one of our hottest days of the summer. As we get to the weekend, Saturday, the heat breaks a little bit around the Northeast and Great Lakes, but it is building in the Carolinas, and we may see some triple digits somewhere around Charlotte, Raleigh, or Fayetteville, certainly Columbia, which we call the armpit, of course, on Saturday. And Sunday will still be very hot, pushing 100 again around Columbia, back into the hundreds in Louisiana and Texas, certainly. And we continue to see that heat building across Florida, where it's been just a relentlessly hot summer. All right, well, it's 7 a.m. my time. I got to get off to family stuff, but thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please share with your friends, consider subscribing. I do have a membership channel now, and I'm going to be growing that out, just $9.99 a month, so about 33 cents a day for you to get quicker responses from me, more personal attention, and any questions that you may have about the weather, I'm going to be answering there as this channel grows. And thank you all so much for getting us past 6,000 here. I know we're going to be growing more. I'm just not going to have the time that I'd like to devote to everybody, to respond to everybody. So I'm going to be spending my time with those paying members. Thank you all so much for your support. This is something I cannot do without my God and my Savior, Jesus Christ. I've been called to do this as my gift from God to be a weather forecaster and to help save lives. I also am called to help save lives and souls by sharing the word of God every day. That is what drives me to do what I do every day. And been a Christian since I was 30. I'm 41 now, so just over 10 years. And the one thing that I know that I struggled with for a long time is faith, just trying to believe in something. But in Hebrews 11, the writer says, now faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. And we all believe something, whether it be in God or not. I personally believe that there's a reason we're all here. God created us, and we have the gift of eternal salvation through Jesus Christ's death on the cross and resurrection. The people did not see that coming, but Jesus was given that vision, and he shared it with everybody, and that was his faith, believing in God, trusting in him after being tempted for 40 days and 40 nights. I know we all have some form of belief. We wouldn't show up at work if we didn't believe we were going to get paid. We wouldn't sit on our chairs if we didn't believe that the legs would fall out from underneath. We wouldn't get in our car every day and not believe that the gas would get the engine started and that we would get going and be able to drive to work or travel or whatever we end up doing. So we all have faith. But in the Bible, the author says that things that we have hoped for and not evidence of things seen. A lot of people struggle with this, that they say, well, I'll believe it when I see it, or maybe there is a God, but I'm just not seeing this, or I have no clue what's going to happen when I die. I mean, I know people say that we can go to heaven if we choose Christ, but I haven't seen that. And the author says, we're hoping for this. We have hope. We have hope in the Lord. And Galatians 6:9 says, and let us not be weary in well-doing, for in due season we shall reap if we faint not. And this is, again, acting on our faith. This is believing that what we're doing is going to lead to results, positive results. And in my opinion, if you're a Christian, lead to eternal life. And Jesus has cleansed us of our sins so that if we continue to believe, continue to have faith, we are not going to be weary in what we do, but we're actually going to reap the benefits of eternal salvation. And that is great news. That is the gospel. That is good news. That is the news that people need to hear, in my opinion. And I will pray for you as many times as you like if this is something that you're just not quite grasping, or you grasp it but you waver with your faith, or you just struggle a little bit every day. You're dealing with a health issue, a money issue, a relationship issue, whatever it is. Does not mean that God is not there with you. It just means you need to continue with the faith, because you're going to go through trials. Everybody in the Bible did. We have multiple books about that. But in the end, you're going to be granted that eternal gift from Jesus Christ. And that is wonderful news. And I just wanted to share it with you because it touches me, and I pray that it touches you. I hope you have a wonderful day. Y'all be safe. We'll have a video again tomorrow morning. God bless you.